the nature of what's happening here this morning is very real. It's very real. So what we're talking about today is the blind spot, not only in the area of advertising and creative, but it's actually a human blind spot. Now, the blind spot is probably best represented by the fact that this room is not full. And I'm just going to say to you, we're in the middle of a campaign, we're 9 months in, and a lot of the work that we're doing is we're at the very beginning of something. So for every one of you who've turned up, thank you so much. Because in a few years' time, when you start a movement, and movements really take time to happen, it's a lot of these empty rooms. But if we don't start the conversation somewhere, we are never going to resolve it. So in this panel that we have today, we are going to talk about the uncomfortable truth. Now, we have two fabulous speakers, both men I know. This is, to my right, Amit, Mashiah, who's with the CEO of McCann Israel. It's actually one of the top performers in the McCann group, I believe.
It is.
And to my left is Charles Trevail, who's the global CEO of Interbrand. We're also going to show you two films. And we're also going to give you a challenge. You see, when you're sitting in a room like this, you are the game changers. The challenge at the moment is, do you choose to be blind or do you choose to see? Do you choose to play the game or do you want to be a game changer? There's a zeitgeist happening at the moment, which you may not believe because you're sitting in a room like this, but it's real. Sinead Burke is a young Irish woman of small stature. She's a friend of mine. She was on the front cover of Vogue magazine, the September issue in the UK. Something is happening. But it's still very uncomfortable. A long time ago, in 2005, Al Gore launched The Inconvenient Truth. And it really was to understand where we were going to be with our environment. That it was inconvenient for us all to understand that actually we were accountable and responsible. And even today, that is not resolved. Now, the uncomfortable truth we're speaking about today is an issue that touches every single human being's life. We have 1.3 billion people in the world who have a disability. That is 15% of our global population. 80% of that is invisible. 80% of that 1.3 billion is acquired between the ages of 18 and 64. So to give you some context, every single one of you at some point in your life is going to touch disability. This issue is not a them or an us issue. This issue is about all of us. We are temporarily abled if we do not have a lived experience of disability at the moment. But the shocking issue of disability, though it touches every single one of us, it is the thing that remains on the sideline of society. It's the uncomfortable piece. So much so that when I say uncomfortable truth, I know that uncomfortable truth. 50% of us are likely to experience poverty, 50% more likely not to get a job, 90% of kids who have disability don't get an education. And get this, you will not believe what Domino Pizza just did a few weeks ago. They hired a team to bring to the Supreme Court to get permission not to make their websites accessible. That is the uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth is, I'm 47 years old. I am registered blind. And I have a very unusual story. I was born in 1971 with this condition, albinism. I can't see any of you from here, which is just as well, probably. I can't see either gentleman from my left or my right, and I always say they get to be the most handsome George Clooney men of all time. I can't see beyond my hand. And when I was born, 6 months after I was born, I was diagnosed. Because of the way the world treated disability, my parents chose to hide it. They did a scientific experiment and decided to send me to a normal school, pretending I could see, and I thought I was the same as everyone else. To continue that experiment, because I was passionate about cars and motorbikes, my father wanted me to continue to have those dreams and bought me a driving lesson for my 17th birthday so I could race motorbikes. If I can't see you, do you know how insane that is? When I discovered I was blind, I chose to hid it. The uncomfortable truth is, I didn't want to be left out. For 11 years, I hid that I was blind until I went to work for Accenture. And even then, they didn't discover I was blind, which I laughingly say What does that say about management consultancy? But anyway, I was in them there, and in October of this year, 2 decades ago, I came out of the closet. The uncomfortable truth is, not much has changed since I did. And when I came out of the closet, which is all captured in a TED talk and then blah, 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 and it's so inspiring, there is nothing inspiring about having a disability. It doesn't define you, it's just who you are. When I came out of the closet, I was fascinated how we could change it. This crisis is so big, it can't be solved by governments, and it certainly ain't going to be solved by charities. Now, the best chance we got is business and celebrity. But we have another uncomfortable truth. So I just want the film to cue now. This film we created as we launched a campaign to tackle this uncomfortable truth. And I want you to look at it, and please do laugh if you want to. It's kind of squirmy, a bit satirical, but it will give you the understanding of why business, despite the fact there's 1.3 billion consumers and suppliers and talent, a market worth 8 trillion, business going, no, 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 this is too much. So can we cue the film?
So this year you've announced that diversity is at the heart of your brand agenda. How does that address disability?
That's a terrific question. And the thing is, I think this is all about inclusivity. Yeah. So this year, for instance, Chris, we sponsored a float at the gay parade.
Yeah. We have women, lots of women. They're like everywhere. Tim's Asian, and gay too, which is great, 2 for 1 right there.
So have you ever had people with disabilities appear in your advertising?
Sure we have. I'm sure we have. Yeah, I would think that is super likely. So.
We're 100% committed to considering a range of clothing for the disabled, you know, further on down the line.
So this is Bill. He's paraplegic, isn't that right, Sharon? And you're on our diversity page on our website, aren't you, Bill?
Yes, I'm the only one currently.
Tremendous addition to the team.
Disability is something that we are committed to investing in very soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
2019 est déjà consacré à célébrer la femme, l'avenir est féminin et tout ça.
Because 2019 is earmarked for BAME, BAME, means a lot to me personally.
2020?
Ice caps.
2021?
Mindfulness. Because...
Do you have a year in mind for people with disabilities?
Well,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just watch this space. That's what I can say. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So this film won a Cannes Lion, which we're delighted because it sort of penetrated the field. But the thing that, for those of you who also can't see like me, the final statistic on that film was 90% of the companies in the world have the audacity to say that they are passionate about inclusion and diversity, yet only 4% of them consider disability. Now, I don't know, but like, do the maths. How on earth can a company say that it's committed to inclusion and diversity if it's leaving off 15% of the population? And actually, this is the truth. So, when I'm going to give you a little context before I talk to the gentleman, is to combat this issue, in Davos this year, the World Economic Forum, we broke every piece of history and launched a campaign called the Valuable 500 from the main stage of Davos, supported by a World Economic Forum press conference. We were told it would take 10 more years for disability to reach the main stage of a platform as influential as that. Not only did we launch the Valuable 500 there, but we launched with 5 of the world's biggest brands. We launched it with Accenture and Unilever and Procter & Gamble and Bloomberg and Fujitsu. Can you imagine 2 of the greatest competitors, the CEOs of those 2 big organizations on the same stage? Why? So the Valuable 500 was launched. The chair is Paul Poman. It was launched for 500 of the world's most influential brands and their leaders to elevate the conversation of disability to board level. Why? Well, the thing is, we do what leaders want. I'm sitting beside 2 CEOs. We know when Sheryl Sandberg leant in, we all started jumping up and down about gender, even though it was done and talked about before then. The Valuable 500, it was a revolution. It is a revolution to get a tipping point to make this real. We're in a time where sentiment rules, but we need data. So we have the data to say where the exclusion is coming from. We have the data to say where it can be an opportunity of 8 trillion. But how do we merge that in the humanity of our leaders, using data and using their hearts? So what you should know today is, though it's crazy enough to think that it's impossible to get 500 of the world's greatest leaders, today we stand announcing our first 100. We're in conversation with 302, but our first 100 global brands, global CEOs who have said, yes, do you know what? I'm going to try, I'm going to begin, I'm going to scale, I'm going to lead. But I know I'm a leader, it's my platform, and I want to change it. The reason the Valuable 500 knows it's business that can change. Well, what is the triggers within business? If business includes, society includes. And what are the triggers in business? The current leaders, hence the Valuable 500, the creative industry, hence we're here today, and next generation. Because the next generation care more than anybody else in the world. And just so you know, some of the brands are the brands that we love. Like the Accentures of this world, the Axes of this world, the BuzzFeeds of this world, the BBCs, the Interbrands, the McCanns. They're big brands because they see there's a blind spot which they could actually use to their own competitive advantage. So what we see is, within this context, business can change the lives of people with disabilities if it sees the opportunity. Within business, the most powerful force is the creative piece, and you, the next generation, can leverage it. So I'm going to turn to Charles first. This is the the global CEO of Interbrand. These are the kind of people you want to work with. And Charles and I have spoken, so we're going to have a very honest conversation here, because the great news is we can, about why is the advertising industry, why is the creative industry, why aren't brands clinging on to this opportunity for differentiation? Because everybody's going after the same thing. And here we have something that nobody's had. In all the decades I've known, we've had PepsiCo, we've had Microsoft doing the Super Bowl, we've had Maltesers, we've had Guinness Wheelchair Rugby, and that's kind of it until later. Charles, why isn't this room full?
Thank you. Yeah,
why isn't there the brands? What can we do?
So why isn't the room full? It's because there are too many other things that are attractive to people today. There are too many other issues that we're all dealing with today. This issue of disability does not, as you said, Caroline, doesn't even appear on the D&I agendas for most of the organizations that we're representing. The reason I'm involved is it didn't appear on ours. So like everybody else, we're doing an awful lot of work on diversity and inclusion. And it was only when I met Caroline that I realized we had the blind spot, just like everyone else. And to be quite honest, I've been in the role 18 months. There's a lady called Marianne Waite in our organization who works in London. She now works for Caroline. But in the first few months, she sent me emails about once a month talking about disability. I had 101 different issues to look at the time. So I didn't ignore them. I asked a couple of people what Marianne was up to and what was going on, but I pushed it aside. It didn't seem like a huge issue at the time to me. I then met Caroline, and I got the story of why this is so important. It also rung true on a personal level. So I think what you're going to find as you get further into this is that either you have a personal story, or you certainly know someone who suffers some disability. And when this becomes personal, I think the world will take it on. So my story at the time was a very good friend of mine was diagnosed with ALS, motor neuron disease. And I spent a couple of weekends with him as his carer. And we went away and did various things. And we stayed in some hotels. And all the hotels said that they had rooms for people with, needing wheelchairs and for the disabled. And we got into these rooms. I stayed in the same room as him because he needed attention. And it was really a joke, because actually it was very clear that nobody who was really disabled had anything to do with designing those rooms. So we started creating a list of all the things that were wrong, and we sent it to the companies, and of course nothing happened. But it was just one of those things. It's a kind of, there's a lot of tokenism around this issue, and there's also a lot of stigma and a lot of shame, I guess. So they're very, very difficult issues to talk about. And actually one of the things we've discussed amongst ourselves is, how do we talk about these issues? It's a really, really difficult thing. But I was in the room when Al Gore launched his campaign, The Inconvenient Truth, in London. In fact, it was before he created the film. It was his slideshow. I don't know if any of you ever saw his slideshow, but there were 500 business leaders, and I think it was 2003, 2004, before he actually launched the film. Look where we are now. It's taken 12, 15 years to create a movement for climate change. Al Gore, the previous vice president of the United States, very powerful, influential man with a brilliant slideshow, which that audience of 500 business leaders in London were totally shocked by. And so the reason I'm involved in this is that Caroline, like any good movement, any powerful movement, embodies the problem, embodies what the change needs to be. And so I think that's a fantastic start. Secondly, because we have a very clear objective from where we are now, to sign up 500 CEOs. And I did say to Caroline earlier before this chat that the fact she's got to 101 in 9 months is astonishing. We all know how difficult it is to get CEOs to sign up to new things. So 101 CEOs, congratulations. So we have someone who embodies this movement. We have CEOs beginning to take it seriously, but it's a beginning. This is going to take some time, and what I would ask each of you to do is to think about what you can do within your own organization, what your own personal story is around this issue, the people you know who struggle with this issue. And I pushed it away a little bit to start with because I thought, wow, here comes another diversity and inclusion initiative in which we are already doing many things. And do we need something else? Is it a confusing part of the message? And how do we fit this into the busy lives that we're all leading? The thing that persuaded me also to get involved was because it's about business. This is not about charity. This is not about feeling sorry for people who have disabilities. It's about designing products and services that work for people with disabilities, but, surprise, surprise, they work for everybody. Some of the leading organizations in the world, and you can look at people like Apple, Microsoft, Nike, Ikea, which we're going to talk about a little, are designing products and services for people who have disabilities that just become better for everyone. And that's what I think the real mission here is, to involve people from the very beginning of projects so that we can co-create solutions that work for everyone on the planet. I mean, 1.3 billion people, this is an opportunity the size of China. Now, if this subject was China, I guarantee this room would be full.
So, well, why doesn't the brand, but the thing is, true, but why are the brands not seeing the creative, and we're coming to you, because you did, in Ikea, but why are the brands seeing this as an opportunity, as an expression of their values, as a differentiator? Do you think it's because it's like, shit, I just don't want to talk about it, you don't see it, it's the one we'd leave it to the edge? What do you think it is?
I think it's a whole set of different reasons. I don't think there's one single reason, and that's what makes building these movements so complicated. You need to create a coalition, and there'll be many benefits, and people will do these things for many reasons. But if I take an example like Land Rover.
Yeah, like JLR, they're one of our, they announced on Friday.
So JLR, Land Rover, they sponsor the Invictus Games. I don't know if everyone's familiar with them, but it's the games that Prince Harry started for, veterans with disability. And they did it as a sponsorship. And, marketing department, great, we get lots of publicity, lots of awareness. They asked my company to come in and start to co-create products and services for people, for veterans, and we did it with veterans who suffer from various disabilities. And you might look at it and say, well, is it just about the car? And of course, there's many, many problems. And the cost of cost of a Land Rover is pretty high anyway, but by the time it's been adapted, the cost of these things is unbelievable. So it's not just the car, it's how do people start to understand about the opportunities this brand or these products have. How do they investigate? How do they go to dealers? How do they do a test drive? All the things we take for granted are very difficult for many people with disabilities. So it's about looking at the problem holistically. So I do think that many organizations still have not seen the opportunity in terms of total brand experience, that they're looking at this and I think most organizations are looking at this as part of their diversity and inclusion initiative, which is absolutely fine. That's great. But the commercial opportunity is the thing we're excited by, and Interbrand have created a brand experience program that involves and co-creates with people with disabilities, and you would be amazed at some of the results that come through.
Well, just before we go to Amit, part of Jaguar Land Rover's announcement, myself and my sister is also blind, they put us in their Land Rover driving experience,
right?
Which is, I'm talking off-road driving on crack, like it is insane. I mean, we were on one wheel. And one of the big things is, like, they see that we're consumers. So maybe Hillary and I can't drive a car right now, but we actually are. Husbands drive cars.
That's right.
Hillary's obsessed with cars, and she's part of the choice to buy a car, by the way, just so you know. And also, when Jaguar Land Rover signed up, we've had literally an influx of other automotive companies going, what do you mean? Right. Jaguar Land Rover signed up, why is that? So creating FOMO, I do think, fear of missing out and competition is brilliant.
Absolutely.
So
and if I could just say, this is an issue of compassion as well. The project we did for Jaguar Land Rover just before this project was for dogs. So we co-created the car for the dog and dog owners.
Can I just say, because they design more clothes for dogs than people with disabilities. Now they're designing more cars for dogs. Are you serious?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But the only issue I made is dogs came up on the agenda before the disabled.
Proved my point.
But that really does say something that, as the human race, we really ought to be looking after those people who do not have the advantages that others have. And I think it's kind of interesting that we were asked to work on pooches before we were asked to work with people with disabilities. So
that is a soundbite that's going to travel. Yeah. I mean, seriously, I thought it was clothes.
And I'm not criticising Jaguar Land Rover. I think they've done a really great job. And I see that Gillette, a business in trouble. Some of you may know this, but they have a razor that is designed for a third party to shave someone who can't shave themselves, which I think is wonderful. These opportunities are out there. Everyone, innovation. Companies are looking at innovation. So where's the next innovation coming from? It's right under your nose, if only you look.
So we're now going to talk about somebody who, so as I said, we've mentioned 5 campaigns that we know have done brilliant stuff. And I just want to say with Maltesers, when Maltesers did their famous ad, including people with disabilities, their bottom line tripled. Okay, so this isn't just some nicey-nicey. The woman who was in charge of it, because it was AMV who did the Maltesers ad, it was AMV BDDO, who did the hashtag Diversish video. They do this not because it's cute, but because it actually differentiates them. And the woman who was behind that actually got several promotions. So I'm going to turn to a gentleman who is going to show, we're going to first show his film, ThisAbles. Now, I just want to give a little bit of context. This was like combining the previous 6 campaigns on disability, putting them to one, and this came from McCann Israel. It is one of the most, I believe, holistic examples of brand experience and how it directly affects the bottom line. It's combining head and heart. So if we can just roll ThisAbles, and as I say this won a Grand Prix and 11 awards at Cannes Lions. So just can we roll this?
Hi, I'm Eldel, 32 years old. Although I have cerebral palsy, I do everything I can to conduct myself like everyone else. But in my own home, of all places, I'm surrounded with furniture crying out, cripple. I'd like to sit on a regular sofa without being afraid I won't be able to get up, to open a regular closet, or even to turn on a regular lamp.
1 of every 10 people in Israel is a disabled person. The Ikea design vision to democratize design gave birth to the ThisAbles project, smart hacks making IKEA's best-selling items accessible. The project was created in collaboration with 2 NGOs and started off in the IKEA store with a hackathon of product engineers and disabled people to better understand their needs. In the end of the developing process, 13 new products were born. Each can be 3D printed, solving a different accessibility issue, such as sofa elevating legs for easier use, lamp button enlargement, special handles for PAX closets, and more. The new products are presented in the world's first accessible living spaces in the IKEA stores, but also online as open-source designs to 3D print anywhere in the world from the project's website, ThisAbles.com.
יוזמה מיוחדת של רשת איקאה שנקראת ThisAbles.
חשובה שתקל על אנשים עם מוגבלויות. איקאה.
Ikea Israel, among first major retailers to make
Ikea is making furniture better for people with disabilities.
Ikea is making its own furniture for people with disabilities.
artículos para mejorar el vivir de los discapacitados.
Já encontrou uma impressão 3D de uma forma Sandy Daí,
It's a very good solution. Thanks a lot to the people in Ikea.
Y la verdad es que creo que es una muy buena iniciativa que han lanzado desde Ikea Israel.
Pavel, Inbal, Moshe, Tahel, Liel, and hundreds of millions of people in the world can feel comfortable in their own homes, like everybody else.
Now they should come up with products that assemble themselves.
So every time I watch this, I've watched it about 10 times since yesterday. It gets me emotional, and the reason it gets me emotional, there's nothing better than being seen and heard as yourself. So what I just wanted to say is the core of this is design, but it's actually the 6 inches between our heads, and it's the thinking about why this was important. I wanted to talk to you, Amit, to say, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
What's so fabulous about this, and by the way, there are all our brands behind us. That's not bad, right? And we're going to add McCann to the list as of today, so this is 101. But the reason I want to talk to you a little bit, can you tell us, why did you, hearing what Charles is saying, the CEO of McCann, take this risk, and what did it take to get this extraordinary piece of work, which has been globally recognized? What did it take?
We didn't feel it's a risk, actually. I think it all goes back to a goal we set 4 years ago to have a diverse workforce in McCann. We set a goal, we wanted to achieve 20% of our workforce within 3 years to be people who come from minority groups. Not disabled particularly, but just all minority groups. And Eldar, whom you just saw in the video, you can tell that he's a brilliant and charismatic person, but he's also a great copywriter who lives with cerebral palsy. We recruited him as part of that plan 3 years ago. And Eldar came to us 2 years ago with an idea. He said, listen, we work with IKEA, and how about we do a project? We create add-ons to IKEA's most popular products. And by that, we adapt them to people like myself, people who live with disabilities. And we didn't get it at first because, we all take for granted the fact that we can furnish our house any way we want, right? We can go and choose furniture that reflect who we are, reflect our taste. There's a lot of variety, of course. Well, it turns out that people who live with disabilities don't have that privilege. Well, first of all, there are not a lot of stores that offer furniture for people with disabilities. And secondly, the furniture that
they can get their hands on is usually reminiscent of hospital equipment, more than furniture, right? As Eldar says, it shouts cripple. So he explained to us that the regular couch is too low for him. He can't get up. And that that small button on the night lamp, his deformed hands cannot find it. Same goes for the handle on the drawer or the handle on the closet door. And we can create very simple add-ons that completely change his life. Now, aside from the moral aspect or the social responsibility, this seemed like a brilliant business move, because IKEA is a company that's carved on its flag affordable design for everyone, right? People who live with disabilities in Israel are about 15% of the population. So it's not exactly for everyone, right? No. It's 85% at best. So how about we extend their offering, we extend their role to additional 15%? What would that be worth in terms of business? Of course, the IKEA team understood it right away, and they were on from the very first moment. They were in, and we started creating that process. We started working on it. I have to say that this was a very difficult process to create. You know, we all know how we usually push away important because of the urgent. This project wasn't part of a marketing plan, and it was uncharted territory for us. Usually we deal with marketing communication, and here we had to really create stuff, which is a bit different. It's kind of off turf for us, but it felt right from the beginning, and that's why we did it. I want to add one more comment about diverse workforces, because I think, well, I work in an advertising agency, and I think advertising agencies are at the best when we have very delicate sensors that sense deep streams in the society, trends, zeitgeist. We can identify needs from a variety of places, variety of tribes. And I think in order to do that, we need to have very different kinds of people. And this is a very good example. I mean, had we not have someone like Eldar on our team, we would never think of such an idea. When we identify those needs correctly and we amplify them correctly, we have a better chance of making an impact and sparking conversation. And I think that, I mean, we were very fortunate to have Eldar on the team and have him bring up this idea.
But you've also become famous for it. So let's just for a second forget it was all good. Mm-hmm. I mean, no, honestly, how many awards did you win in Cannes? It was like insane.
Yeah.
And then McCann won the industry award. It won Grand Prix stuff. I guess they're dying to promote you to global level and all the stuff that you do. This wasn't just a good, important thing. This delivered to the bottom line of IKEA, and they've taken it seriously as well.
IKEA sales for these products rose by 40% since we launched it. It generated earned media at a worth of about $60 million, and it gained huge recognition all across the world, got accolade all over the world, and great recognition at Cannes Lions. So this was a great project. IKEA Global is now has sent teams to Israel twice to explore the project and see how they can roll it out globally. And I'm hoping that other companies will follow IKEA's path.
So on that competition, like when you see this kind of work, are you going, shitballs, I need to be on that? Or what? Like, how do you see that? Is that something that just triggers you going, this is something that the industry will be looking at and trying to replicate? Or what do you think? Or will they see it as a once-off?
No, I don't. I think, again, like we've said, to build a movement, you need many different parts. And I think the creative industries, if they start to see this as a really important issue, and I think, you know, the creativity of the work you've done and the campaign and all of that is fantastic. It gets the recognition.
Yeah.
the thing that struck me when you said it is that their brand promise for everyone isn't for everyone.
Exactly.
So that's something we can all go out with. We can look at every company in the world that says we're for everybody and challenge them and say, are you?
Are you?
Are you really for everybody?
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's where Interbrand is going with this. Caroline's coming to speak at our event with the world's top 100 brands.
Yep.
And that's the message to them. If you say you're for everybody, well, we challenge you. Whether you really are for everyone. Are you doing things that are promoting and building products and services for the whole planet? And so I think it's fantastic, the creativity to get this, to get the results you've got, but I think it also sets that challenge at a higher level as well.
And it frames it, like you and I talked passionately about this. This is not, oh, God bless you, well done, Amit.
Right.
That's
It's not
great.
charity.
It's lovely. So where do you fit on this charity? Because you could be accused of going, oh, isn't he great? He's a lovely old CEO, and that'll be it once off and we're done. So could you, from the charity perspective, give us what you really believe?
It's a good point. I'd like to take a moment and talk about the difference between charity and inclusion. I mean, we all work for corporations. We all been involved with charity. Donate time or effort or skills to those who are less fortunate. But we got to remember that charity never is an imbalanced thing, right? It never happens really in the eye level. There's the person who gives a donation and the person who accepts it, and it's not really balanced. And I think true inclusion is about balanced relationship. I mean, Ikea here is saying, hey guys, we're open for business. We didn't have products you need, but now we do, so please come and buy them at a fair price. This is not a charity, this is not a donation. We're just doing business here, treating you like every other customer. We're just making stuff that suits your needs. And I think if we adopt an inclusion mindset, that's probably key.
And the other piece around the charity piece is about talent acquisition and retention, so acquiring the best talent. If you're an agency who's going to produce that work and take those risks, that's exciting. Yeah. We are in a hiring crisis. So from a talent perspective, both of you, in attracting the great creative brains and giving them permission to do this, is this kind of work essential? So that they can come into your agencies and do this? Do you see this as part of the talent war?
I'm not sure.
Great.
I'm not sure, if I'm really honest.
Yeah.
I think, the turnout we've had this morning, I think we've got a way to go.
Okay.
Yeah. Being really candid about it. I think there are other issues at the moment that sit higher up on the agenda globally around diversity and inclusion, which is why we're here, but it's also why I think both Amit and I are talking about the commercial opportunities here, not to be hard-headed about this, but to go back to, the great work you've done for Ikea. Think about a couple of things. So I wear glasses because I don't have great sight.
I beat you.
Yeah?
You're very competitive, right?
Yeah,
but I don't know the size of, the market now for glasses is enormous. So suddenly we've taken, when I was 18, I didn't wear glasses because I was so shamed because I didn't want to wear glasses. All right?
Oh, this one's for you, by the way.
I've got past it now. I've grown up, but look how, people now wear glasses who don't need glasses. We all wear sunglasses. You look at the market for hearing aids. Hearing aids have been stigmatized and there's been a shame around wearing hearing aids. You look at what is going to happen to the hearing market. Apparently the hearing aid market is about $8 billion today. I guarantee that market is going to transform, and many organizations are now going after the unaddressed market, which is all those people wearing pods. Apparently most men of my age are beginning to go deaf. We don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
But if that can be destigmatized, and we know that people like Bose and Apple and others are working on it, there's an estimate that the market's worth 45 billion. So that's my message. Is yes, it's an issue within organizations for how they recruit and how they run their businesses in an inclusive way. But the market opportunities, it frustrates me when I see big consumer goods companies and others saying, we're really struggling with innovation. We're really struggling with innovation. We've been looking along that aisle and there's 101. Sure, but here are innovation opportunities to do things differently if we start to look at the world through the eyes or through the bodies of people who are suffering from various disabilities.
Well, the other thing is, you know the way there's as we come into here, it's called Great Minds Think Unalike, which is one of these hashtag things we're coming into Adweek. Now, Timmy, come on, echo chambers. We banged on about this yesterday.
Yeah, I think
so. Like, great minds think unalike, because that's where innovation comes from. We're not all thinking the same things. We're not all doing the same things. How do we break these echo chambers? Like,
well, it's difficult. I don't know. Do you have an idea? It's a good question. I think. Look, this is a big problem because most of us are surrounded with people who are very similar to us. I mean, in Israel, we have 4 major tribes. We have Arabs, we have secular Jews, we have ultra-religious, and we have like right-wing settlers. Okay, we have 4 tribes. McCann is the largest advertising agency in Israel, and most of us belong to one tribe. And 95% of the advertising we do is pointed to that tribe. We don't do campaigns for Arab people. We don't do campaigns for ultra-religious people. So we're addressing about 30% of the market here. And our clients, you know, they want to grow. We're looking for ideas all the time, you know, looking for new solutions to problems, trying to understand needs better for 30%, because that's who we are, right? We all come from that tribe. And I think if we want to really, that thing about the dogs and the disabled, that's something I'm going to take, definitely. Because that's a problem of one specific tribe, right? Most of the people who sit behind the table probably belong to that tribe, and they say, "Oh, how awesome would that be if we could, you know, do something that's nicer for the dog?" But our job is to find needs that we didn't meet yet, and we need to find them in different places. And if we want to do that, we have to find a way to get out of the echo chamber and get different perspectives. And I really don't know how to do that on a day-to-day level. It's so difficult. But I think one of the best ways to begin is to create a more diverse environment. So if you have people from, you know, different parts of society, they will bring up the needs. And I think Ikea and Eldar are a great example for that. And once it's out there, I mean, many times the answer, the solution, is obvious.
And I think the other thing is, if we're going to talk about innovation, we're going to get it wrong. So before we start shaming the car companies who wanted to choose dogs over anybody else, because I don't know if shaming and judgment is necessarily going to get us there.
Yeah.
I think truth-telling and holding a mirror. We were talking about, was it Nike, about the shoes? Because I think there's something really interesting to unpack about that, and when you're talking about echo chambers.
And by the way, Jaguar Land Rover, one of our clients, we thought it was brilliant, by the way, that they wanted to co-create cars for the future with dogs. And there were 5 or 6 innovations, because we don't know that anyone else had done it.
And by the way, guide dogs is something,
exactly.
is part of it too. So I'm opening for solutions everywhere.
I think they start to look at the world, and they found that 50% of their owners had dogs. So it was just like, it was them being creative. Let's co-create the car for the dog. So in itself was brilliant, but I just found it kind of interesting that the disability thing came after the dogs.
Of course.
This is a tricky subject to talk about. It is, I mean, even before coming on, we all struggle with language around the whole diversity, inclusion. You know, me, a mid-50s, in fact, late 50s man, trying to deal with, you know, the stuff and having conversations with my daughters. You know, I have 3 sisters and 2 daughters. And my daughters say to me, "Dad, you have no right to have a judgment on the issues of what it's like to be a woman, because you're not a woman." So I get my rehearsal for this at home, and it's a tricky world we're living in. So a lot of CEOs are very, very nervous about how do we go into these difficult issues and not make a terrible mistake or not be shamed? So the example Caroline were talking about, that Nike have just announced that they have made one of their ambassadors signed a contract with someone with cerebral palsy. I don't know if you guys know about this or have heard about
They
this.
designed the shoes.
They helped design the shoe. Yeah, they've co-created a shoe without laces that's much easier for people with cerebral palsy and others to get on. But they've got a lot of criticism for the way in which they announced this. So apparently what happened at the end of a half marathon or something like that, they went up and gave this gift to this gentleman. And
the ambassador contract.
The ambassador, yeah. And he sort of broke down in tears. He was very, but rightly, they were criticised because they would never do that with an athlete, one of their normal athletes. They would never hand over a contract at the end of a race. They would sit down and it would be a contract. It would be a two-way negotiation. But so they've got some criticism about the way in which it was done. It was sort of seen as a kind of charitable act rather than treating this individual as, an equal. So, I think they had the best intentions, I believe, but the way in which they did it in such a sensitive areas has received criticism.
And I'm guessing if the complete opposite of that is you worked co-creating with Algar, okay? So if they had spoken to that athlete and said, how can this be done, and actually consider them in the conversation.
Yep.
So I think one of the reasons that this work that you've been doing is so authentic, it is because the actual intelligence is Algar's.
That's right. We're also Israeli, so politically correct, we're not very good at that. We're very direct and blunt, so it makes it easier. But I think, we touched on this earlier. We just signed Valuable 500 yesterday, McCann, and we spoke...
In a cafe?
In a cafe,
yeah.
That's right. And we spoke about it earlier. What do we do now?
Yeah, tell us what to do now.
It's like starting a diet or starting to work out. You need to start moving in small steps. Just change something, and then we'll add something to it. And we need guidance here. We need guidance because we feel like there's too many traps, and we got a whole bunch of stuff to do elsewhere all the time. So we need consistent guidance. Yeah.
So I'm just mindful, we started 10 minutes late and I would talk forever, but I can't actually, now I can't see you. Is there anybody who wants to add a question? Because if not, I want to ask the guys one more thing before we leave. And I just know that we wanted to see if there was anything any of you wanted to ask or question. And by the way, if you're going to put your hand up, I'm definitely not going to see you. The guys will. Yes. I do have a question. Thank you.
Hi, this is Steph. I have a question. So you just signed the pledge yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously created the pledge or to sign up. What does that entail? Is it based on metrics? Is it a promise? Is it in 5 years we'll do this?
No.
But yeah.
No. Look, you can hear from my voice. Like I'm not waiting 5 years. I'm deeply impatient. And I'm also 47, so this has got to happen sooner. Yeah. The Valuable 500 is simply to get the conversation elevated to board level. The commitment is the team around the CEO or the CEO agrees to have a conversation at board level and make a commitment to action. And it does not need to be something enormous, okay? Like Unilever have done something huge. They want to have 5% of their population by 2025 who have a disability. It can be very simple as ensuring that they get somebody in to talk to their C-suite team. It can be as simple as looking about designing, in the world of designing, are we looking at the disability perspective when we're talking about gender? Or what are the intersectionalities? It just depends. The critical thing is the CEO writes their name and said, I'm going to do it. I'm accountable. I am responsible. I know what this platform and this privilege enables me to do. And the only reason a CEO or a brand doesn't do it is they simply don't want to. It's not about money. Legal, risk, and compliance is all done. I simply don't want to, or I simply do. So, anybody else? Scribbling around, quiet.
I would like to learn more about the process of creating content for
for advertisement for disabled people?
Well, it was a long process. It was a 2-year process, and it was uncharted territory for us in the beginning. We started looking for NGOs who can help us. We ended up working with 2 incredible partners, Milbat and Accessibility Israel, 2 NGOs that spend a lot of time manufacturing products that can help people who live with disabilities. And we started the process by deciding which add-ons we want to create. Actually, the first time they presented prototypes, we saw that the prototypes they created were again reminiscent of hospital equipment. It didn't look like IKEA designed products. So we had to get product designers and creative directors to work in multidisciplinary teams with Milbat and Accessibility Israel and create products that look more like IKEA's products. And it was interesting. I mean, as we progressed, we challenged with different problems. There was a point where someone said, well, if we want to create accessible solutions, we need to find a better way for people to get their hands on the products, because a lot of the people we're aiming for cannot just jump into the car and drive to IKEA. So we ended up developing products on an open source and just enabling people to download a code and print it on 3D printers. It was a fascinating process for us, and we learned a lot from it.
So the key is, I think, consulting with the people whose voices need to be heard. I mean, I think
That's true.
the piece that you would do in any focus group with any particular industry.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to quickly wrap up. I just want to say before we wrap up, there's 3 things I've learned in doing a campaign like this. It's the people that you meet and the people that take the risks. There's 3 adjectives: authentic, accountable, and acceptance. So I'm just going to start with the back. Acceptance is, this is what we're in. This is the system. And you're not a victim to it. I'm not a victim to this. None of us are. So accept where it is, and let's find the cracks in the light so we can get in. Accountability is we are all accountable for the decisions that we make. I'm sitting between 2 gentlemen who genuinely could have turned around and walked away this morning, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate you sitting here and saying, you know what, I'm accountable for being here. And that's really important. And actually, integrity and accountability, as we go through a business, they're few and far between. But also authenticity. It's a real pleasure to be with 2 gentlemen like yourself. I would have flown to New York just to have this conversation with both of you, and I mean that. Yeah. It's rare to find authentic leadership. And authenticity, and when we talk about inclusion, is about being able to be yourself. This conversation about disability has got nothing to do with disability. Nothing. Every single human being knows what it's like to feel otherness. Every one of you, disabled or not. And you know what? If you could stop making somebody feel left out, well, that to me is a bloody smashing way to do my job and the work that I do. So I'm going to leave the last word to these 2 gentlemen to say, what would you say as you leave this room? And you can say anything on PC as you want, Charles Trevail, as bold as you want, Amit, because you're feckin' great for coming. So what do you want to end with as you rush off to Boston and then do podcasts and speaking and everything else?
Well, on a the otherness, I think, is a very powerful point to end on. You know, I'm involved personally also because my daughter, when 7, was diagnosed with quite severe dyslexia. And I realized I had it too. So I'd lived most of my life. And I just, what I want to do now is show people who have learning disabilities like dyslexia that you can, you know, when I was 7 years old, I was hopeless at exams. And I was bad at maths and I was bad at spelling. And my daughter at 5 came home and said, I think I'm stupid, Daddy. I can't, you know, I'm not doing very well at school. And she's not stupid, she's smart. But she just is a little different and she learns a little differently from other kids. And, you know, I've done okay in life. I've had a wonderful life. It's been absolutely fantastic. And you learn workarounds. But I want to live in a fairer world. And I think that there are, you know, given there are 1.3 billion people out there suffering from some sort of disability, I think they deserve a voice. So congratulations to Caroline for pushing this cause forward. It's going to be a long road. But the fact you've signed up 101 CEOs in 9 months, I think, is absolutely astounding. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Amit, what are you going to say to the room as you leave?
Well, just try to do something meaningful every year. Just one really meaningful project. It's usually the hardest one to do. Just try to do something meaningful. And I want to thank you too, because I find you very inspiring. And thank you for inviting us over and having this conversation.
Well, thank you to all of you, and thank you to Virgin Media and Omnicom Group for being our strategic partners, to Janet Riccio, Richard Branson, Paul Poman. If there's one thing you do today, I'd like you to watch the film, the little advertisement called Think Differently, that was done for Apple years ago. Apple is the first brand in the world to reach 1 trillion, and it designs inclusively. And the reason I want you to think about that or watch that before you go to bed, because it says those of us who are crazy enough to think we can change the world usually do. I'll see you in 10 years in a full room. Thank you.
Thank you.